The NewsX and Business World panels on the Indian economy. We are, of course, decoding the current state of the Indian economy, looking at how bad or how, tough this year has really been like for businesses across various sectors, what innovative steps entrepreneurs have taken to circumvent some of those impacts, how much the government and the RBI have managed to help, and what more still needs to be done as we, of course, look to regain the growth levels in the pre-COVID era. Joining us, as always, on the broadcast is a special panel. We have Sameer Nigam, CEO, StratBeans, joining us live. Konkona Bakshi is also live with us at this point. Maaz Ansari, co-founder Ori, is joining us live. Neil Juria Singhani, co-founder and CEO, Data Culture, is also joining us live. Anurag Batra, Chairman, Editor-in-Chief, Business World and Exchange for Media Group, joins the panel as always. Welcome all of you, and thank you for being with us. Sameer, let's begin with you first. What was the impact of the pandemic on your business, on your sector, and how did you try and circumvent that impact through some steps that you possibly took this year? Recap it for us.
Thank you very much. The impact initially was not really as pronounced on all the parts of our business, but we suddenly saw an increase in the digital learning products. So many companies came to us and then they immediately wanted to start the projects. And then, of course, there were certain deals which required more intimate interaction with teams. Those became impacted and those did not take off very well. And to circumvent this situation, we really had to launch some newer variations in Indian market, especially the tools which were related to testing and proctoring online, and totally in contact kind of solutions had to be done. And that has been an overall theme for the entire past year, the whole period from April to this time now.
Okay. I want to ask you, Sameer, that corporates are focused on now, right now. They're not focused in the future, so to say. Corporate spending became even more rational. It focused on the basics. Cash is king, so all corporates tried to save costs, and especially they tried to put it on something that generates revenue. Of course, employees are the biggest asset that any corporation, whether in even a product manufacturing setup and of course in the services setup. So tell us, have the L&D budgets of corporates really gone up, or do you have seen them being repurposed? A certain sector of the L&D budgets got shifted to another sector. Give us what are the trends?
A great question there. Repurpose is the word, of course. People couldn't really change their budgets as such, because you see the time this pandemic really kicked in, we were already in the new financial year. The budgets were already on the ground. Only thing was that now that the training budgets couldn't happen for in contact kind of trainings, people started saying, okay, so what can we do about these budgets? Can we do self-paced training more often? So people reached out to us with a change in their strategy kind of situation. The second thing which happened was that, while you're right, all these corporates are focused on today, but think about the cost as a sunk cost sometimes, So if you have already put money on employees and your employees are on the ground and they are not able to reach offices, what can you do with them? So very creative new thing which has happened, I must tell you, is that people started saying, okay, now all of these employees are very, very intelligent. Most of them in the large corporate senior roles are very intelligent, but they're sitting home. What can they do? So they can become like people who are creating content. So there's sudden increase in the demand for subject matter expert tools, using which people like you and me can share knowledge and create content which can be reused. So a lot of times in the past, the customers used to say, hey, here's a detail and you go and create the content for us using your developers and designers. So this time we had to give them tools using which somebody sitting at their home, a senior person, senior vice president, could share their thoughts and really encapsulate it in a self-paced video, which could then be transferred onto LMS. So this has happened a lot really. And perhaps
tell us what are the areas in which, Sameer, what are the areas in which corporates are, kind of showing a need? What are the courses that are in demand? Give us a sense of where is this L&D spend going?
So I'll tell you about the most critical part here right now, because like you say, people are really thinking about what happens to what they're going to do right away. So, if you see conventionally, they create their business strategies and they say, hey, looks like we are going to get into this strategic area. So for that we need competencies of our employees in this area. Now imagine we're really not talking about any soft skills more often in this case. We're talking about very hard skills. We're talking about, let's say, I'm an insurance company and I'm going to launch a type of health insurance. Now, do I have people on the ground who can talk about that to my customers? So process skills, if you had to summarize it, process skills was the biggest.
You're saying skills that are required in a virtual world. So the contactless training, increase the contactless skills. Let me come back to you. Let me go on Konkana Bakshi. Konkana, you as an entrepreneur, again are in the grooming space, in the etiquette space. People aren't going and doing dinners. So do they really need etiquettes? People aren't going outside and meeting people. Do they really need grooming? I know that we are all spending more screen time. We are all screenagers, even if we are not teenagers. And I know human interaction has gone on virtually or contactlessly. So tell us, how has your business in the last 8 months kind of pivoted? What are you doing to make sure that you are providing the skills that are required in a post-COVID world to survive and hopefully thrive?
Good evening, gentlemen, and thank you so much for having me over, Anurag. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. It is so true that do we really need etiquette anymore, because people are not meeting over dinners anymore, or business lunches are not really happening. But etiquette is nothing but relationship building, and that has become a focal point of business in today's world. Why? I'll tell you, because since we are doing this contactless meeting, the importance of relationship building, the principles of etiquette, I'm not talking about manners, I'm talking about principles, which are nothing but consideration, respect, and honesty. These are the key skills, and the importance of it has enhanced in today's business world even more, because earlier we used to meet face to face to build relationship. Right now, we are stuck through screens, through build relationship, or even if we are meeting clients. Even we are meeting clients for closing a deal. How are we really meeting? We are meeting through Zoom. So the importance of building relationship has even more enhanced. The way to build relationship, the interaction, the soft skills, the finer touch of compassion has really, really enhanced. While we don't do business lunches anymore, we are constantly communicating. And what is etiquette? Etiquette is nothing but relationship building. The way I make you feel in my company, and that is it in one word.
Tell us, I asked this to Sameer, and the reason I brought you, at the end, companies are focusing on now. They're focusing on what is the output next week, next day, next month. And for a lot of industries, human talent is the biggest asset they have. But still, not sure T&D is going in the way it should go. So have your budgets that come from clients kind of shrunk, or have they grown? Give us a sense of that. Tell us, how has the contactless added to your scaling up? I mean, as you were telling me today, your clients beyond India, you couldn't do that many programs outside India because it involved traveling and, then the cost factor. So, but you're being able to do many more workshops and one-to-one sessions for CEOs and promoters. So give us a sense of what has happened to your business in the last 8 months.
So to my immense surprise, I thought I'm going to shut down Savoir-Faire Academy for next 1 year when the pandemic started. But to my surprise, what happened is we didn't provide international virtual sessions before. I was not comfortable with it. I was more of a face-to-face, private clients, hands-on person. Even with corporates, I used to go there to train, and my team used to be there with me. And I did let go of several opportunities, business opportunities, when I just did not accept invitation. However, in this pandemic, what happened? Our existing clients, we stopped sessions with our existing private clients and corporates, but we got queries from UAE, from England, from Brisbane, from Singapore, and we got private clients, businessmen, young entrepreneurs to enhance themselves even more through this lockdown periods, because time is very, very important to us. And I think a lot of young entrepreneurs and business leaders have also understood the value of investing in themselves, and that's why I have grown a very niche, beautiful clientele internationally, and I'm thrilled to say that I'm literally training every single day. I am training on international timings. That is a little bit of a challenge, but I'm training every day. And business has thrived. Business has, this pandemic has taught me to be more creative, to have a more creative approach towards my business. Earlier, I used to have a conventional approach towards my business where I used to think, well, my team would go to do leadership training, etiquette training, etc. Or the clients would come to us for my private interaction, private session. Now I have a more free hands where I'm teaching my client in Singapore, in Brisbane, in London, and I'm happy with it. And I've grown a larger audience with Savoir Faire Academy. So
absolutely, I think, Konkona, you're not the only entrepreneur in a services domain that is saying that the internet has led to scaling up because the audiences are multiplied. There is no limitation of geographies, and our own mindsets have been changed for better. Let me go to Neil first and then Mars. Neil, give us a sense of what you do and how has your business pivoted in the last 8 months and where is it headed?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. So last 6 to 8 months have been quite, exciting, so to say. But at the same time, there was a lot of uncertainty. And we're a classical startup. It comes with the usual struggles and the usual excitement, right? What we actually let me just quickly talk about what Data Culture does, right? So Data Culture is a risk mitigation and collections management platform for banks and financial institutions. So we kind of fit in really well with a lot of challenges that banks are facing at the moment. What we, however, saw post-April till August was that, everything slowed down for us at least. Banks and, NBFCs in general were not lending out. There was a lot of stress already, on their books and with, their existing, portfolio kind of deteriorating on assets and the quality of assets. We had to kind of, slow down on business. Revenues took a hit. What we did, however, was that we utilized a lot of this time to go back to basics, look back at what we can do and we should do on the product side. The challenge, however, for any startup is that, one, when you see such a downturn, which at least, I've never seen in my career, what should you do, right? What are the actions that, one head of the company should take, a small company, which is not just, myself and my co-founder, but, there are 30 other families kind of, linked to what you're doing. Right. So essentially, keep yourself motivated. And once you're motivated, you can, keep your teams motivated. And that's what we did, right? We had to go back to basics. We started working on, our clients. We actually, went back to our clients. We checked with them as to, are we doing it right? While right now the business is slow, but, do you see post, once this is over, that, there is a requirement for what we are doing. And unanimously, all of our clients essentially said, you know what, Neil, hang around, wait for this to kind of, go away and, business will come back. So that kind of kept us motivated and, we therefore kept our teams motivated, went back to product. We had a complete product roadmap, which was for probably the next 12 months. And we kind of, we said, okay, let's use this downturn to, work more on the product side and, kind of crunch those timelines. And that's what we did. And essentially August is when, the business started to come back, at least for us.
And Neil, if in March you were at 100 rupees of business, in December mid, where are you? Are you at 50, 70, 150?
So we'll probably, in December, we'll probably be at 50. Things are slow. We kind of saw a spike during Diwali. but now things are again back, and probably rightly so. Banks and NBFCs, our clients essentially are being very cautious, right? There is already a lot of stress in the system, and we're not blaming them, but we're kind of continuing with them. We're getting a lot of insight still because there is business that is coming back slowly. The consumer behavior has kind of changed when it comes to just loans, and for what purpose people are taking loans, and so that's a lot of learning that we're gathering.
Even the people who are seeking loans are conservative because they don't want to be in a arrangement where without incur they're having to have a loan. So clearly, not just the lenders are conservative, but the whole ecosystem, dare Absolutely. I say. Maz, give us a sense of what is your business for our viewers, and what is the pivot you've taken in the last 8 months to kind of reinvent the business for the post-COVID era?
Thanks, Anurag. Thanks for having me over. So I'll just start with what Ori is all about, and then we can jump into how our business has transformed, right, and what are the changes we made to business. So we are a company that operates in the conversational AI space that makes chatbots, so to say. But we focus on a very niche area, which is around revenue.
Am I speaking to Maz, or is it a chatbot masquerading as Maz?
Oh, no. Right now it's Maz, but maybe 2 years down the line, a chatbot can masquerade.
Okay.
So what we do is that we help clients communicate better with customers. So today, the way they talk to customers, right, across advertising, sales, and customer support, we reimagine all of it. And what we do is through AI, we actually emulate the experience of talking to a salesperson, right, which is very deep, personal, and a private experience for people. So what we essentially do is that we are able to take existing systems, right, of sales and revenue management, where people are going from one page to the other, trying to make sense of what the product is about, talking to several people. We bring it all down to one touch point. So effectively what companies get out of this is a better marketing ROIs. With some clients in the auto and telco space in India, we've been able to drive 40 times more conversions with the same investment, right? So this entire period, right, for us, the pandemic has been really good for us because we've seen a lot of surge in the acceptance of AI, right? So earlier what we thought would be 2 to 3 years for the market to get to a certain level, all of that was catalyzed because of the current situation, right? So there was a lot of strain on customer-facing networks of most companies. In fact, we are working with companies that have 20 to 40,000 agents on their payrolls, right? And with COVID, there was a rising influx of customer queries, and resources were fairly constrained, right? Call center agents weren't available. So there was a lot of problem where the companies couldn't proportionately scale up their servicing capabilities, right? And that led to, number one, the need for conversational AI, where everyone understood that, okay, this is something that is not only a good to have, but it's a must have right now. The second thing that helps a company like ours, right, which has a lot of patents in the space, is that clients finally understood that, traditional chatbots that have been going around since, say, 2015-16 don't make the cut anymore, given the spike in consumer traffic on digital channels, which also makes the case for virtual agents, right? So now, instead of chatbots that can just respond to queries that are very mundane and get irritable, you need chatbots that can handle the end-to-end solution, right? Like collecting queries, processing them, and in effect, emulating an effective salesperson, right? So all of us have memories or have had an experience. We walk into an auto dealership or go to purchase a TV, and there's this one guy who's so effective at empathizing with what you want that from a panel full of TV screens, right, he'll tell you that, sir, you know what, basis of your requirements, these are the two that fit your lifestyle in the best way. So that is where we are.
Maz, give us a sense of, let's say, if there were 200 agents, as in call center agents, 200 touch points, whatever word you want to use, handling incoming basic queries, because of immersion of chatbots and automated technology, give us an impact on the numbers, and you gave us the impact on output, which is 49% better conversions, business growing. Give us a sense on cost. How much cost were you able to bring down?
Okay, so I'll give you an example. We work with one of the 3 telcos in India, right? And within 45 days of deploying our solutions over there, we were able to bring down the agent count by 80%. That is because of, and these are agents in thousands that we are talking about. So that is on the revenue, that is basically in the cost cutting area. When it comes to maximizing revenue, we've been able to drive anywhere between 20 to 40 times improvement in terms of the conversions that people are seeing with the same marketing spend.
Okay,
So
that's significant.
it's two-pronged.
That is significant, both from a cost standpoint and the impact standpoint. And what do you think are the implications if you're going to put chatbots? What will happen to jobs?
No, so see what
You are taking away jobs of people.
Oh no! I don't think it's that right. There is
Maz, just adding to that, that's the age-old argument as to whether technology is a jobs enabler or a jobs cutter.
See, I feel that even when the industrial revolution happened, right, the same questions could have been asked. So there is a constant need for people to keep reskilling themselves. And what we feel is that, see, in 2015, right, people always thought that, okay, when chatbots came in, everyone will be sitting jobless. But the truth of the matter is that you need more people than ever to manage these chatbots that you've put in, right, in a lot of places. So what we see is, we see ourselves as people who augment human capability, right, and push them towards focusing on things that require a deeper skill set and more expertise. So what we see happening around us with the people we deal with, right, is that they are stepping up and trying to figure out how they can enhance their skill sets to be more effective, because they have to coexist with technology like this.
Absolutely, it's not either or. Uday, you and me out, it's not either or.
Yeah.
But clearly, maybe some basic jobs may get impacted, but it may create jobs in a different value-added way. So clearly, it's not either or, and it's about basics next some functions. While we know singularity will happen, and machines may think as well as human beings and perform some tasks.
Yeah.
But I think that's away at least 10 years, if not more.
Maz Ansari, beginning with you first, let's just quickly talk about some lockdown lessons that you learned through handling of this pandemic that could also prove to be words of wisdom for our viewers watching today as well. What were your main takeaways, your lockdown lessons learned from this unprecedented year, and also some key trends you've seen, Maz, emerge that you believe will not go away or are here to stay now?
All right, thanks for that. So I think the first thing is that everyone should learn how to cook. That's been a big lesson. But coming back to the question, right? Sorry about that. But seriously, what we've seen, right, is that. Sorry, could you come again?
Any suggestions on which cuisine? No, I'm just kidding. We know that the do-it-yourself economy, because of shortage of help and because we wanted to be safe in our homes. So I know I was at a get-together of my business school juniors, and the only conversation that all of us were happening, when will our maids return? So clearly, cooking yourself is a very important agenda.
Yes, and coming to organization lessons, right? What we've learned is that, okay, and what we've really adapted ourselves to is that, okay, sitting together is not the only way to work. Like earlier, there was a lot of things that we would push to when we could meet and discuss things, right? But being forced into a situation, we got acquainted with newer ways of working, number one. I live in a different city, right? Compared to my home city, I work from a different city. So the need to have a close group of people, be it your employees or your friends, right? And constant communication was key for us. So setting up systems which would allow us to communicate constantly with employees and not relying on, say, more traditional channels like email was one of the things that we really picked up, right, and effectively utilized. On another front, our reliance on cloud technologies, right, so adopting technology on every front possible was something that has happened. So if earlier we were subscribed to, say, 10 services, during the lockdown we subscribed to maybe 20 more. Right, so relying on technology a lot more, learning to do things yourself.
You have to walk the talk. You are for immersion of technology in all the aspects of doing business. So clearly you want to kind of, evangelize by using. So you clearly believe in technology, and I believe almost every process and facet of every business is moving online. E-demos are becoming big. E-sales are becoming big. Chatbots answering basic queries is becoming a norm. It's not even, something which is out of the ordinary. So clearly technology immersion has gone up, but tell us about philosophical lessons. For example, I keep telling myself that this shall too pass. I keep telling myself, just be grateful for being alive. I keep I'll keep telling myself, cost is the only certainty. Focus on reduction of cost, while revenues is a big focus. Focus on what are essentials. So tell us, what are your philosophical lessons, Maz?
So for me, I think what was important, right, is to understand that, okay, family and friends are as important as work is, right? So I think there was a lot of, everyone was all about work all the time, right? There's a lot of work that happens now also. In fact, work has increased manifold. But getting family and friends back into focus has been one of the key things for me.
Okay, I think that's good focus. And clearly, I genuinely believe if your family is happy, you will be happy, and it will produce actually better work in any sphere. If you're centered, if you get love, if you give love, if you perform your basic responsibilities well, I think you geared up to perform better. That's my personal view. Neil, what are your top lockdown lessons?
So I think for us, for me specifically, personally, I think vision is very critical. Be true to your vision, right? Especially in such uncertain times. If you don't believe in your vision, things can just go down, right?
So in spite of the challenges, continue to be true to your vision.
Absolutely.
Believe in it. Have self-belief. Even
Absolutely.
in the face of difficult situations, walk the vision that you kind of started the journey with, right?
Absolutely, right. So suddenly, one fine day, you are asking your teams to work from home, and also, and that's a big step, right? So there's a lot of trust that you kind of put into your employees and your team, and be okay that remotely these guys will still work and do their best, right? And for that, you yourself have to be kind of clear and be true, as I said, to your vision, which will keep not yourself motivated, but you can use that power to also keep your teams motivated. So that was one big lesson for me. Initially took some time, but yeah, we had to kind of quickly come down to this, first learning this lesson. The other is, of course, if it's a downturn, utilize that time, in the best possible manner, right? So suddenly, there was not business happening, not enough business happening, not enough revenues happening, that can itself lead you to kind of think negatively. But, how do you be positive and utilize that time to your, best possible? So, at least for us, what we did was we went back to, improving our product, work on the customer experience, use a lot of insights through the data that we had captured, build new use cases for our platform. So that's what we did even on the product side. Third, I think, which is very critical, is health, right? Personal health, right? Keep yourself fit. Ensure good eating habits, regular exercise, right? A lot of times,
These are such basic things that we ignored them. Uday, all of us were ignoring basics. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs were too driven by their businesses, neglecting their health. And Uday, sometimes we make a virtue of being over busy, being overworked, sacrificing on sleep, sacrificing on family time, sacrificing on the things that made us who we are in the first place. I mean, when I hear all these entrepreneurs talk, these are not things that we didn't know earlier. But the fact is, we started thinking they're important, and more importantly, implementing them. So there is a silver line in Corona times, so to say. And the only thing I'd say to Maz and Neil is that, when you love your work, there's, before COVID, I said it and say it after COVID is that, I don't believe in work-life balance. If you love your work, I mean, for me, I love my work. Of course, quality of sleep is very important. My family is very important. My health is very important. But honestly, I don't look at the watch, except I know I have a 6 to 7 p.m. show. I work till I can work. So clearly, Neil, I want to ask you one question. Is that give us a change in a habit that brought in a quantum improvement in your work life?
So I think it was, think about your health as well, right? So as you said, work is important, and a lot of times, especially when it's a startup, you tend to work more. When you're working from home, you're probably, continuously looking at your screens and not really thinking about, what's the time, what are your kids doing and stuff like that, right? So bringing back that focus. So what essentially I did was that, I kind of changed my routine. Morning exercise, evening walks, right? Eating healthy. So, a lot of eating habits changed for me, or I actually forced, myself to change those eating habits for better. So, that's what we did apart. So, work was happening and, you need to keep yourself fit. Again, you're sitting at home, probably the little walks that you will get when you are working from office was also kind of, going away. So you need to kind of adapt quickly and to the, on the positive side and kind of, take that out of this whole crisis, so to say.
Absolutely. And Neil, I would say a lot of us took our health, our time, our families for granted. I think we are more grateful and we are more conscious of it. Yes. So I think that's the subtle shift that has happened. Konkana, what are your top lockdown lessons?
I learned a lot, to be honest. I learned to be a lot more productive than I used to be. I'm saving a lot more time and utilizing those time more constructively because I'm teaching online. I'm teaching up to 3 people online and shuffling with international timings. So it has, to be very honest with you, this lockdown has really transformed my efficiency towards my business. Is that it has taught me how to manage my team emotionally, not only business-wise, but a lot of us were going through a lot of anxiety, emotional anxiety through this pandemic. As a team leader, and I have young people working in Savoir Academy. It was my responsibility that they were emotionally well. We have expanded our training. What we used to offer before was only etiquette, business etiquette, social etiquette, body language, image transformation. That was our niche. Now we have expanded our training module. We are training in CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, which I have trained myself before the pandemic, but I didn't practice it. I did practice with my private client, but virtually we are very successfully running it for mental health. Through cognitive behavior therapy, through CBT, we are actually transforming people internationally and virtually, just through virtual training, just through mindfulness exercise. And I'm talking about not only my clients, but also our people in SFA, in Savoir Academy. So that has really taught me a lot. Also, it has taught me to help my team be emotionally stable. I think that is something that we all learned right through this pandemic, the value of relationship, that extra compassion, that the extra that you extend your hand on days that probably your subordinates are not having the best of the time. So I think that has helped me a lot. Earlier, I was very target driven, to be honest with you, but now I'm more compassion driven. It has taught me a lot to be a lot more compassionate, and it has worked on my favor because the productivity of my team has definitely gone up. As I mentioned, I have created a lot more module that we used to have. We have the whole creation of luxury appreciation and CBT and extra on dining etiquette. Everything has really worked on my favor, to be honest with you. That is the professional side. On the personal side, I've learned the real value of friendship and relationship. My friends all over the world, we are more connected than we ever have been. I think a lot of you would probably agree. And
I think we are genuinely more grateful and contented. That's what I would say. And
Dr. Batra, that same question for you. That same question for you. What have been some of your lockdown learnings as we approach the end of 2020? As as the head of this media venture that you started as an entrepreneur, what have been the learnings for you? And also, you constantly interact with your team closely in Delhi, but you also recently traveled to Mumbai and obviously interacted with more of your team members there. What are some of their learnings as well that you can share with us and yours today?
First of all, I think people are more appreciative of any gesture you do towards them. Whether, I primarily went to Mumbai because a very senior colleague of mine was getting married. We did an acqui-hire of a digital company, so he heads that. I went primarily for that marriage and one, interview. These are 2 things I went for. And of course, I met my other friends. But I think people are genuinely appreciative if you take out time. And, here is my hypothesis, Neil, Mars, Konkana and Sameer. The more virtual grows, the value of physical grows. It takes an effort to go and meet someone. It means you get out of your comfort zone. You're taking a risk. Second is, Uday, while we need to have the social distancing, the hygiene and the mask, discipline. I think people have accepted that COVID is here to stay, and they are getting on with their lives with all the precautions. The traffic seemed normal in Bombay. It was a wedding time in the hotel. The hotel was full. So it didn't feel like the world is come to a halt. But I did travel on 31st October for the first time during lockdown. Things are much better since 31st October. There are many more people on the streets. People have accepted Corona and are trying to go on about their lives despite that, with all the precautions, and rightly so. And I would say the two things I would say that have changed for businesses. One, for a lot of businesses, digital has become a big driver, and it has suddenly given some businesses lease of life. Businesses who were struggling in their earlier non-digital avatar. Second is existing digital businesses today are dreaming so big that some believe they can conquer the world. I met some really big entrepreneurs who already have big businesses in India, but they believe now they can take on the world. So clearly the Prime Minister's clarion call of being Atmanirbhar, and not just looking at India as a market, but make it for India, but make it for the world, kind of thing, being not just a pipe dream, but something that will happen in due course. It may not happen immediately, but over the next few years, with the ambition that the Prime Minister is creating for us, and the fact that through government action, some opportunities and windows of opportunity that are opening are real. They're not theoretical. They're not just a slogan. It's not a jumla. It's really the Prime Minister has changed the consciousness of a lot of entrepreneurs. And I would say team members, colleagues, employees are more appreciative of the fact that even entrepreneurs had to kind of use this time to be able to still look after them, look after companies, stretch them, and while doing all this, maintain their own emotional well-being. Because being an entrepreneur is a lonely job, as all of you. You have to motivate yourself every day that you get up. There's nobody else. You got to engage with your family. You got to engage with your investors. You got to engage with your colleagues. You got to engage with the external world. And the problems that you face are opportunities, but you got to solve them. You can't, as an entrepreneur, you can't go to someone else and say, oh, solve this for me. So clearly, team members and colleagues are more also sensitive to their bosses. They're more receptive. They're more grateful. And it shows up in their work clearly. Forget in their body language and what they say to you. So Uday, there are positives of COVID. We are very mindful of the fact that a lot of people suffered on losing their family members.
Yes.
A lot of sectors are under stress. And can I tell you from a media perspective, I think media is going, India is an ant country. While there is a SVOD, which is subscription-based video on demand, and there is an advertising, both are growing. They're an ant company. E-commerce is growing, but physical experiences, face-to-face experiences are growing. So India is an ant country, and feature phones are growing and smartphones are growing. So it is a country where there is a market for everything. So for a media product or a media platform, while we need to be digital, I think televisions, newspapers, magazines will continue to see traction at least for the next 3 to 5 years. Like we've been talking about the demise of radio for at least 30 years, and radio still has its place in our life. I think the more something becomes virtual, the value of that goes up. And last point about cinemas. On Saturday night, I was in Bombay, and I decided to go to a cinema hall. Eventually, I didn't go because I had an early morning flight on Sunday. But can I tell you that the experience of going to cinema may be great for me, but when I ask my young children or their friends, they don't miss cinema halls. For them, Netflix is the cinema hall, Amazon Prime is the cinema hall, the Hotstar Disney is the cinema hall, or whatever other OTT anyone uses. So clearly, a lot of businesses will get changed, media businesses, forever, because the expectation that millennials have from that business and content are very different than what you and me have. You're much younger, but clearly I am a little bit nostalgic about cinema halls. Not sure the millennials are. So some businesses and media will get changed forever.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I've seen those small screen halls in Dehradun, where I studied, because the tier 2, tier 3 towns, of course, did get multiplexes only much later. But coming back now again, one last round with all of our panel before we close on.
And Sameer did not share his top lockdown lessons.
Sameer Nigam, on your takeaways and or your lockdown lessons, and also some trends that you believe are here to stay, and then we'll begin our final round. Sameer Nigam.
Okay, so I'll quickly give you three lessons really. One which sort of rhymes with what Konkona was also saying related to mindfulness. So guys, some days it is hard to find motivation. So taking care of body, mind and spirit is so important. So suddenly for me, the appreciation for green and blue spaces has increased quite a lot. Gardens where you could go or find some water bodies. So suddenly I started cycling a lot more around Gurgaon. So that's one thing. And a lot of my colleagues are also doing it. Second is that, so we are lucky that we are in an anti-fragile kind of industry right now, and our business has grown. So on that context, we, there are two most important days. First is when you were born. Second is when you find out why. Now, in this time, co-founders together, we found that we could help other businesses. So we have helped about 57 organizations, keeping them afloat. And we gave them technologies through which they could do that. They were, some of them were coaching institutes, some of them were really doing well before COVID, but then they started thinking. So we gave them our technology free of cost. We tried to help them that way. So the third lesson is really, that's a little different, sometimes we are too set in our ways, like Anurag was saying, but we started thinking, okay, it's a crisis, but what if it comes to me bearing a gift? Now that question has changed our perspective. We could really see a lot of things which were a type of cost that we have really killed from our balance sheet right now. Looks like we'll save a lot of money there. And then we have also come up with a couple of positive thoughts, positive models. So we're really not hating the, this COVID crisis that much. We really have to live with it now, so why hate it that much?
Okay, let's begin our final round then. A quick rapid fire, two quick questions. One, when you believe the economy will be back to pre-COVID levels, and why? 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 3 weeks? How long will it take? And two, on what more still government and RBI can do. Interestingly, we're speaking on a day when this morning Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has begun her first round of conversations, of meetings with various stakeholders in a build-up to the budget of 2021. So over to Sameer Nigam for your comments.
So I think this should bounce back in about 6 months, and the reasons, if you ask me, economy should bounce back is because if you look at the kind of if I compare it with the other crises that we had so far, financial crisis 2001, 2008, then the nature of the crisis is very different. Despite its brutal intensity, the COVID shock is preferable to an investment bust or a financial crisis. And the second related point to this, when you're trying to analyze an economy like India, is what kind of structural damage this any crisis does, and this crisis does. So this is one of key determinant. When a recession leads to a collapse in capital expenditure and pushes workers out of the labor force, and economy's productive capacity declines, that's very bad. But in the case of COVID, the recession is slightly more favorable in this respect, as there is no overhang from the last expansion, which did not see excess in investment or lending that now has to be worked off. So in that sense, that's really a positive thing. So, bounce back possibilities. We are seeing a lot of sectors are coming back already. The other thing to look at it is that you look at, there are 3 types of sectors right now. Sectors which are unaffected by COVID. There are about 46% sectors like those. Then there are sectors which are affected by lockdown, but not by social distancing. And those are about 15-16% of them. And there are 38% sectors which are vaccine dependent. Of course, you have got a crisis there. And like, Anurag was saying, there are, movie houses are probably one of them, recreational houses are one of them. But again, you see the silver lining there, food services, they have bounced back with a new avatar here. So really, I am looking at, 6 months time span where you should really see a lot of light, at the end of the tunnel. Do you want me to talk about the government initiatives also?
Please, very
What-
quickly.
what-
Yeah.
Okay, so what I find is that if you look at one of the indicators of economy, that is totally hope based. When you look at the stock market, for example, so in that sense, hope is a big part of the government thinking as such. So the government's policy response was pretty quick, if you ask me. And one of the things that I have also seen from my friends who are from Ahmedabad circle, and they are the entrepreneurs, we keep meeting a lot. The moratorium really helped a lot. A lot of the times, the cash flow could be contained so well. If you see, especially the SME segment, SMEs are a very large part of India's, entrepreneur sector. So that really helped. The other thing is, if I don't know if most of you would be aware, but this government e-marketplace is a great place to be. And there, the government really started creating very special treatment for SMEs during the COVID, especially. So now there have been a lot of such good forces which are helping people take different shape. And logistics sector, for example, there was a lot of investment coming in this sector. Also, government was supporting with a lot of policies there. So I think I would encourage the government to really look at helping on the fiscal side a lot. Also looking at the debt structure for these companies, because financially, all of my panelists will agree that companies don't die because of lack of profit, but they die because they go bankrupt sometimes. That's a very different thing altogether. So cash flows are the most important thing. Government's trying to help there.
While every layer of size of the company was trying to, while you were trying to conserve cash, your clients were trying to conserve cash, your vendors were trying to conserve cash. So clearly, being frugal and conserving cash has become the mantra. But Sameer, clearly I want a very direct answer. When do you see the economy coming back in full bloom?
So like I said, 6 months.
Yeah, but what makes you so optimistic about 6 months?
So I told you these three factors that you have to see. The kind of if you see, there are some positives already in those economies which are sectors not affected by COVID. You can see that manufacturing is.
Yeah. Clearly, you believe that the government response has been good, and I would add, if you looked at the US 2 weeks back, there were food riots, right? Food riots in the US, the most advanced developed company in the world. However, in India, which the American media likes to paint in a certain way, that there's still cows on the roads and everybody is a sadhu. Small headlines which are negative get big space in the New York Times, and sometimes things that are good about India don't. Clearly, in India, in the last 8.5 months, because of the government's proactiveness in making sure that everyone gets food, especially the bottom of the pyramid, the middle belly of India, there's no major social unrest. Yes, right now we're dealing with a change in farm laws and there is protest, and that's another kind of a issue. It would, even if there was no COVID, it would have happened, because there is a new regime, there is a new law, there are 3 bills that were passed. But clearly, there was no food rights. But Neil, when do you see the Indian economy coming back in full bloom? And what do you think the government can do better from here on?
So I think if we start immediately and with the right set of policies, we're probably talking about 9 to 12 months, for things to kind of reach pre-COVID normal, so to say. But I think it's a process. It's not an event, right? So no one thing can change or bring things back to normal.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to interject there because we're running out of time. So 2 more panelists still to go. So Neil, very quickly, 20 seconds more to you. As I said, it should be a rapid fire because this is our last segment. So quick question on maybe 1 or 2 suggestions you still hope the government can do. Do you believe their response has been excellent, good, bad, terrible, and when you believe the recovery will happen?
I think 9 to 12 months if there are right policies, and both short-term and long-term measures need to come together and be synergized. I think government-driven expenditure will be very important right now, since there is no personal and private expenditure that's happening, which was almost 60% of the GDP. I think rural development is key with so many migrants going back, and we now understand the challenge that we face in the rural employment space. Similarly, urban employment is another challenge with 90 million poor people, living in urban areas. So, all these policies need to come together which is both short term and long term to make a change.
Okay. And Maz, your quick comments on when the economy will be back and what government can do better.
Okay, so mid 2022 is what I think, because if we look at the GDP, right, it contracted
18 months.
Yes, because data supports that, right? So if you look at GDP contraction 2 quarters ago, there was a 24%, right, and 7% last quarter, which means that this year averages at around 10% contraction. So next year, even if we do 10% better as an economy, by mid 2022, we are only going to hit Q4 2019 levels. That's one. The second part, which is very important, right, is really the vaccination schedule, because a lot of developed countries would have 60% of their population vaccinated by mid of June 2021, right? 60% is the critical balance that you need to eradicate a disease, and India will only reach that level by, say, mid 2022, very positively.
Okay. Konkona?
Okay.
Konkona.
Last word, Konkona, from you.
Well, I think I agree with Neil that it's a process, and 9 to 12 months should be, we should look at it optimistically. And having said that, government have also been very proactive during the lockdown with everything for the economy to, grow faster, so that we didn't have to crash completely. However, I think 9 to 12 months is good. Having said that, I also would like to mention that the Make in India initiative has really been helpful for young entrepreneurs like us. We are youngsters. We are starting up businesses, and when we see a government which is very optimistic and thriving, and always on the go, it gives us a lot of hope that in this country we can grow, and we can grow faster and on an exponential space.
All right.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.